Welcome back to this week's recipe. I have a really delicious recipe for you guys today. So the weather has been heating up, and today is actually probably one of the hottest days so far. I keep thinking we're in springtime, but I think we're definitely edging into summer, and it is just really heating up. And so during the summertime, there's one dessert that we love to make, and that is homemade ice cream. And a lot of people have never had homemade ice cream. They've never seen it made, and it seems kind of confusing how you would make homemade ice cream. And so I wanted to make you guys a canister of homemade vanilla, it's like a custard type ice cream. My youngest daughter Julie, her birthday, we're celebrating it tomorrow, and she requested homemade ice cream. So I thought, what a better time to shoot the tutorial. Kill two birds with one stone. I'll teach you guys how to make it, and we'll get it made today for her birthday tomorrow. I do like that you can make it ahead of time. So when it finishes churning and freezing, what we normally do if we're going to eat it that same day is we leave it in the bucket with the water, the ice, and the salt, and packed real tightly, and then we put a beach towel over it, and we'll let it sit in the shade for several hours where it gets even more thick. When it's first made, it's a little more creamy. It's delicious, but it's a little more creamy. If you let it set for several hours, it will become harder and more like ice cream. So that's what we normally do. But if I know that I have the time to make it ahead of time, I will make it, and then I will take it out of the canister, and I'll put it in a freezer container, like a plastic with a pop-on lid, and I'll stick it in my deep freeze. And then it will become much harder, just like the ice cream that you would buy at the store. A lot of times when you get ice cream at the store, it'll be real soft, or you get certain brands that are better brands, and they've got just such a nicer texture. They freeze harder, they're a little harder to scoop, and they don't melt as quickly. So if I can get it into the deep freeze, I like to do that. So what I love about this recipe is it is just there'll be one more ingredient, some whole milk, a little bit later. That's just 5 basic ingredients. And if you've ever looked at the labels on the ice cream at the grocery store, there is a lot of really bad for your health ingredients listed on there. And we haven't bought ice cream at the grocery store for several years. We always make it, and it really isn't that hard. And it makes this big, huge container full. And then I'll just, like I said, keep it in the deep freeze, and that'll last for a month. And then we'll make another canister, another flavor. And so all throughout the summer, I'm making homemade ice cream and just keeping it in the freezer for when we want it. So anyway, all that this vanilla ice cream is there's half and half, and some sugar, and whole eggs, and some vanilla. And then we're going to mix all these together, and we're going to cook them on the stovetop for about 10 minutes to dissolve the sugar and bring the eggs kind of up to temperature, and to kill any bacteria that might be in the eggs. And then it thickens up like a nice custard. And then I like to set it out in the fridge and let it chill. Now you can make this right away and put it in the canister and with the ice and actually make the ice cream. But I feel like it goes faster if you start with custard that has been chilled, as well as the flavors will develop, and it will become a richer, better tasting ice cream if it's given some time in the refrigerator. If we're not making ice cream spur of the moment, and I have a warning, I love to make the custard in the morning, like I'm doing today. Make it in the morning, and I get it into the refrigerator. I'll put it in some mason jars, pop the lids on them, and just stick them in the refrigerator, and then they'll just chill. And then the next day when we're actually gonna serve it, I will pull that cold custard out and continue with the recipe. So for today's tutorial, I am going to just let it chill for a couple hours, and then we'll go ahead and make the ice cream when it cools down. It's so hot out there, the ice is going to be melting, and I don't want to be out in that heat. So the first step is to get the half and half and the sugar into a saucepan. Alright, so we're just going to stir this up to kind of dissolve it. You don't have to fully dissolve it because you will be cooking this for about 10 minutes on the stovetop. But I just will do it for a minute or two. You're going to want to get the eggs whipped before you add them. So we're just going to take 6 whole eggs and crack them into a bowl and whip them and then add the vanilla. It's a great use of your farm fresh eggs when you've got a lot of them coming in. Alright, so now we're going to add the vanilla. I've got 3 tablespoons of vanilla. And we're just going to mix that up and then add it to our saucepan of sugar and half. Alright, we'll get these into the milk mixture and get it onto the stove. So now we're going to cook this on medium for about 10 minutes. And that's going to allow the sugar to dissolve completely. Then when you're stirring it and you can feel that the sugar is all dissolved, just go ahead and turn off the heat and you're actually done with the base of your ice cream. The custard base has been sitting on the counter and I've brought it down just a little bit. I don't want to pour the, straight from the stovetop. I'm afraid it would crack my jars. So I did cool it down just a bit. And now what I like to do is I've got my fennel and I just pour this right into these jars. I cap them off and then I stick them in the refrigerator and let them chill. Now I do want to explain this canister. So if you've never seen an ice cream maker or used one, I'm going to show you just the canister part. Now, as far as the insulated bucket that this goes into with the motor, we'll go over all of that when we actually start churning our ice cream. But I like to chill this canister as well as the base, the custard base. Because everything just really cold, it's going to make the churning of the ice cream go a lot faster. Now, they do have different sizes of canisters. We have a really tall, narrow one, but they also sell ice cream makers where they're fatter and shorter. In the very beginning, when I was first married and the first time that I ever made homemade ice cream, I didn't know all the ins and outs to ice cream makers, and we actually found this one at a garage sale. And I guess we just really lucked out because as the years have gone by and I've picked up other ice cream makers and I've tried them, like if I've had a lot of people and I wanted to have 2 ice cream makers going, I've had a ice cream maker that was more the short, fat one, and I noticed that the ice cream in the tall cylinder froze a whole lot quicker than the one in the short. And I don't know if it's because it's just, taller and it can, there's more ice per, on the canister, and it just froze so much quicker, and I liked the texture of the ice cream better. So when you're purchasing an ice cream maker, you might want to keep that in mind, that a tall skinny canister would be best. So when you open it up, there's this is called a dasher, and the motor is going to attach right onto this, and the motor is just going to turn this and churn the ice cream. So the ice cream maker, you can see on the bottom, I'll show you, it's indented here, and you can see inside there it's indented in. And so when you put this dasher inside this, there's a little knob on the end, and that is supposed to fit right inside the indentation in the bottom of your ice cream maker, and that just keeps it, right in the middle and stable. And then when we set this inside the insulated bucket, there will be a spot on the bucket that this can just fit right into, so it just holds everything secure and upright. And then when you put the lid on, the hole in the lid, this is able to come right through, and then the motor is able to attach this and just turn it and spin the the dasher. So that's kind of how it works. And then when you put the lid on, there's an arrow. You would want to make it go the direction of the arrow. So it's going to lock down that lid. So when we're making the ice cream, there's a few other things I want to explain about this. But for now, that'll be probably enough. So I am going to stick this in my refrigerator, or you could stick it in a deep freeze if you have one, and get this very, very cold. This will be very, very cold, and then when we're ready to churn our ice cream, we'll start, it'll be very cold products and ingredients right from the get-go. So that's all for now. We're going to come back in a couple hours. I've got some other stuff to do today, and I'm waiting for it to kind of cool down tonight, and then this evening we'll take this onto the porch, and we will actually make the ice cream. All right, so we're out here on the porch, and we are ready to churn the ice cream. So I'm going to take the camera over and show you all the rest of the ingredients that we're going to need. I'll kind of give you an overview of the ice cream maker, and then we're going to pack it all up and get the motor running and get the ice cream churning. So the rest of the ingredients that I've collected is I've got the canister that's been in the refrigerator chilling with the dasher and the lid, and then I've got some additional half and half and some additional milk that we'll be adding to the custard base. And then this is the custard base that we made, and then I've got some rock salt. And we've got a big bucket of ice, a big ice chest. So this is more than we need, but we're going to use the rest of it for our event tomorrow. So the ice cream maker, this is the insulated bucket, and you can't see because of the shadows, but down in the center of it on the bottom, there's an indentation that this little knob is going to fit right into at the bottom. And that's what's going to keep this right in the center. Then you're going to have your contents in here, the dasher, and then you'll put the lid on it, and you'll twist this the direction of the arrow of the lid to lock the lid in. Now for the motor has a hole right here, and that is what this dasher is going to fit inside of there. But the first thing that you want to do is on the side of your insulated bucket, it has, if you'll see these two brackets. And so you're gonna put on your motor, there's two on one and one on the other. So you're gonna put the two, you're gonna just fit it right inside, and then you're gonna fit your dasher right inside. And you kind of have to sometimes twist the canister to get it fitted on there. And now once this is down on this side, you can pull this little lever and it locks everything in place. So this is going to hold everything stable, and now when we plug it in, this motor is going to twist the dasher inside, and that's what's going to churn your ice cream. Now we're going to be packing ice, and layers of ice and layers of rock salt in here all the way up to the top, and then we'll be turning it on, or we'll probably be turning this on first and then be adding it while it's spinning. Now as we add the contents to this container, you're going to notice that your ice cream container says fill line, and when we add the custard that we made, it's only going to come to about right here. And so we're going to pour that in, and then we're going to fill it all the way to the fill line with half and half, more half and half, and some whole milk. When we're adding that additional cream and milk, you can add straight half and half, but that will probably make very rich. The finished product will be pretty rich. If you like that, that's perfectly fine. You can make this ice cream with straight half and half, because remember, this that we already made, this is straight half and half. So if you add it in here and then you take it to the fill line with half and half, it's going to be pretty rich. So I just kind of eyeball it. I'll put the concentrate in there, and then I'll add some half and half and some whole milk, and I just kind of eyeball it depending on how rich I want it. But I do like to use whole milk so that it kind of lightens it up just a little bit. So you'll notice as I'm putting all the contents in here. I'm not going to really give you exact directions or amounts because that's really going to be up to you. The only thing that I wouldn't put, I wouldn't fill anything with like whipping cream or anything like that. That's going to just be a really fatty like mouth feel, like when it's frozen and you're eating it, it'll be very greasy feeling in your mouth. So I would stick with half and half, and I would suggest that you do some whole milk with it. Now one thing I like to do is I like to pour a little milk into these jars, shake them up just to get the rest of what's left in the jar, and then pour it on into the canister. Now as you can see, we have filled it. It's about this full, and the fill line is here. So we're about here, so we need to add about this much more milk and half and half. I'm going to start with adding some milk, quite a bit of milk. And then I think I'll go ahead and add my half and half, the rest of what I have, and then I'll probably top it off with milk. That'll be a nice mixture of whole milk and something a little heavier. I'm going to turn this so I can keep an eye on that fill line. As you can see, the fill line is right here. You can see it through, so it makes it really handy. Now I do want to mention, if you in the future, if when you make this, if you want to add anything to it like crunched up candies or anything, I would suggest that you don't go to the fill line. Drop it down about 1 inch so it'll give you a little bit of space to do add-ins. But I'm not going to really talk about this in this tutorial. I'll do it in a later tutorial. So I'm going to take it right to the fill line. Now we're going to add the lid. And as you can see, you can feel, if you move this dasher, you can feel that it's right in that indentation in the bottom. Now just put the lid on. And the arrow's going this way, so you can just turn it. And now we're going to get this into the insulated bucket. Now if you notice in your insulated bucket, there's a hole right here, and that is to help the water drain out as it needs to. So when you're churning it, keep an eye on this hole, and if it gets clogged, just kind of break the ice away to leave this open and free. Now it's time to get this positioned into the bucket. So like I said, I'm feeling around and this will fall right into the hole. There it goes. I can feel that the bottom of this just fit real nicely into the hole. So now it's time to put the motor on. And like I said, these teeth are going to fit right into this hole. Then the next step is to get this stem fit into the hole of your motor. And you have to kind of work with it for a minute. There it goes. Now I'm going to turn the canister. There I can, let's see if this will work. Yep, that went right over the top. So there we go, everything's in position. And so now I'm going to plug it in and get the motor to turn this before we start adding the ice and the rock salt. Before I talk about that, I do want to suggest this is a wet mess because the ice is melting, and so you are going to want to put this in a place where you don't care so much about the salt and the ice, like if it's going to be draining into a flower bed that you care about. I wouldn't do that. I would put it in a place where you can just hose it off and you're not worried about that rock salt. Different times when we have made this and we don't want to do it outside, if it's just too hot and we would rather be inside, we have actually set it in the bathtub. And it just spills into the bathtub, and it's really easy cleanup, and then that way you can do it in the house. It's in the bathroom, you can close the door, and that loud motor isn't bothering you. So just kind of think out where you want to have this going, because it is going to be loud and it does have salt and melted ice. So as far as how you put the ice and the rock salt together, we're going to do about 2 inches of ice first, and then you're going to do 1/4 cup of rock salt, and you're going to sprinkle that around, and then you're going to do another layer, 2 inches of ice, rock salt, and you'll just keep layering it up. You're going to bring that ice all the way up to the top. The lid be exposed so that I can see the lid. As it's spinning, that ice is going to be melting, and it's going to be coming out that little hole that I was showing you. And so as you see the ice dropping, you're just going to keep adding layers of ice and rock salt. You'll be doing that the whole entire time this is churning. It'll be spinning quickly. The motor, it won't sound like it's bogged down or it's slowing down, because it's just liquid that's in there. But as this ice cream thickens up, as it freezes, the motor's going to get slower and slower, and at the end the motor will come to a complete stop. When you're making ice cream, in the very beginning, you know, I've left and went and did stuff, but I'm always within ear distance where I can hear that motor. If that motor comes, once the ice cream becomes thick, if that motor comes to a complete stop, but it is still plugged in, you're putting a lot of extra strain on the motor. And if you left it like that for too long, you could ruin your machine. So, you know, as you go through the process and as it's getting thicker and as the motor's slowing down, I would definitely stay within hearing distance. And as soon as you hear that motor stop, then get over to your ice cream machine and take your hands on the top of the lid and try to manually turn it. A lot of times if you do that, it will catch and it will start up again, and you'll get another couple minutes of time for that ice cream to get even more frozen. So if you get it going and then all of a sudden it stops again, just kind of work with it, and as soon as you can tell like this motor is not going to be able to turn this anymore, then you're done. Unplug it, and then, you know, when we get to that part in the tutorial, I'll show you what to do next. But just keep in mind, stay within hearing distance. Once you hear it stop, try to get it started again. Once you can't, then we're done. And throughout the entire process, keep that ice and that rock salt layered up, and that is what's going to freeze your ice cream. I just want to give you a little bit of science if you're trying to figure out how this all works, like scientifically. The rock salt, when you put that rock salt with the ice, that is going to make the water colder without freezing. I think it's like 6 degrees below zero, that it will stay water without freezing. So the water that's surrounding your ice cream, it's going to be a lot colder than it would be if you didn't have the rock salt. So I mean, if we need it to be sloshing around, we need it to be watery so that the canister can spin and turn. Normally at 6 degrees below zero, it would be frozen solid and it wouldn't be able to move at all. So if you just stuck ice in there and it got 6 degrees below zero, which it probably wouldn't be able to, but even if it did, it would be frozen and the motor would not be able to turn it. And the dasher needs to turn it in order to make it ice cream, or else it's just going to be a frozen ice cube. So that rock salt is super, super important, because that is what is allowing the water to drop below zero, cold enough to freeze the ice cream, but still leave it soupy enough, you know, not a solid piece of ice, but a liquid that's so cold that it's going to be able to spin properly. And so that's if you're interested in what the rock salt and the ice and how that all works, and it is very important. So putting that layer of rock salt in between the ice is, you know, essential to being able to succeed with getting this to go from cream to homemade ice cream. Once I get the motor going, you're probably not going to be able to hear me. I'm going to be really competing with the noise of the motor. So once I turn the motor on, it is going to be pretty loud, and I don't want to compete with trying to talk while the ice cream maker is going. So you're just going to see me putting in that 2 inches of ice, that 1/4 cup of rock salt, and you know, I'll take some shots throughout the process, and then I'll be back when the motor can no longer turn that canister. So I wanted to show you guys what rock salt looks like before we get started. It's literally like big pieces of rock. Now you could use table salt, Himalayan pink salt, kosher salt, but you would be using an incredible amount of salt and it would be a lot more expensive. This isn't a food grade salt, so it doesn't cost very much to buy this. So this is really the way to go. Okay, I do hope that you guys can hear me over the noise of that motor, but I want you to listen to the motor. You can hear that it's really starting to lug and not be as fast. And when he pushes on the ice, you can see how soupy it is. Oh, see, it just stopped. Try and get it started again. Can you get it going?
I think it's done.
You can't get it going again?
No, it won't go, and it's plenty.
All right, so let me unplug it. All right. So Hans, press down on the ice so they can see. That's really soupy. There's a lot of water in there, but that water is below freezing, and there's the hole that it'll drain out of. So now what we want to do is we're going to take the motor off and we're going to pull the canister up about halfway out of the ice. Okay, so as you saw, we could not get that canister going again, so we knew that it was finished. So we unplugged it and took the motor off. And so now what you're going to do is we're going to tip the bucket and drain a little bit of the water off. You don't want to drain the whole thing, but we are going to pour a little bit of the water because we want to pull the canister up about halfway. You don't want to pull the canister completely out because then a lot of times it's hard to get it back in, and we want it to stay in the bucket with ice all the way around it. So we're going to drain a little bit of that water off, and then we're going to lift the canister about halfway. We're going to take a towel and we're going to wipe down the top of the lid and along the edge, because we're going to take the lid off and we don't want any of that salt water to drip into our ice cream. So if we can pull it up about halfway out of that salty water, wipe everything down, then we're going to take the lid off. We're going to pull the dasher out, because if we were to leave that in there, the dasher would become frozen in the ice cream, because the ice cream is going to get colder and colder in there as we let it set. So we need to get the dasher out now while the ice cream is still hasn't become too firm. So you might want like a spatula to scrape down the side of it to get most of the ice cream off, and then put it in a bowl, and it's fun to let the kids or you can eat the ice cream off the dasher. That's always the fun little treat while you're making ice cream. So once we get the dasher out, we're going to put the lid back on. We're going to push it back down into the water, and now that lid, it has a little hole on the top. You might want to put a little piece of foil to just make sure that nothing gets inside of your ice cream. And then once we push that back down into the ice, we're going to pack it with ice all over the top. And then we're going to put a beach towel over the top, and we're going to put it somewhere so like if it was direct sun, a really hot day, you might want to bring it in, or just put it somewhere where it's going to be a little bit cooler. And it's best to let it set for a couple hours, because that rock salt and that ice is going to be so cold, it's going to cause the ice cream in the canister to really freeze up. If you would like, you can take it out and you can transfer it to a freezer container and put it into your deep freeze. But I always like to let it set with a beach towel over it, become a lot harder, and then we enjoy some, and then we'll package up all the rest and get that into the deep freeze. So we're going to start with that process right now. Wow, that is frozen solid. That is so nice. Look at that. So like I said, you want to have a bowl sitting right there so that you can stick the dasher into it and enjoy eating some of this right away. That's the fun part.
That is so good. You want some?
Here.
I'm gonna put this on.
All right, now we're going to put the lid back on and
Put more ice.
put that little piece of foil on top.
I'm gonna stick it in.
Okay, so now we're going to pack ice all over the top of this. We've got one more bag. So I think we use, how big are these bags of ice?
7 pounds.
So we use 4 7-pound bags of ice. So we're just going to take the rest of this ice and put it all over the top. And then we're going to fold up the beach towel and lay it over everything and get this into the shade and leave it for several hours. Alright, so our ice cream's been sitting for a couple hours, and now we're going to serve it up. When we serve this to like a group of people, like a get together, and it's just sitting out and everybody's serving themselves, then we will leave it sitting in the bucket of ice, and that way it'll stay chilled the whole time. But if, you know, we're just going to serve up a quick bowl for ourselves and then pull it out of the ice and package it in freezer containers, we'll do that as well. Most of the times when we make homemade ice cream, it is because we are going to be having company, and that's what I'm going to serve. I kind of schedule it that way. We don't buy ice cream at the store, and so during the summer, I love to make homemade ice cream about once a month, and I usually schedule it to where I'm doing it when we're having company so we can serve it to our company. And then all of the leftover I put into storage containers in the freezer. So as I was saying before, that when we do serve it to company and we've left it packed in ice with a beach towel over, and then we pull it out and we're all going to enjoy it, I leave it in that bucket of ice. I pull that canister up a couple inches out of the ice, take the lid off, and we serve it right there. We don't take it out of the ice. Once we're done eating it, like I said, I put it into storage containers. Now, I like to freeze it in the deep freeze in 1 serving increments. If you ever notice when you buy ice cream at the store and you'll take the carton out and you'll serve yourself a bowl and it will get kind of melty on the counter, and then you stick it back in the freezer, and then the next time you take it out and serve yourself a bowl and it kind of melts a little bit, you stick it back in the freezer. Each time you do that, it's changing the structure of that ice cream and it's turning more icy. And you'll notice as that ice cream gets older, sometimes you'll take the lid off that carton and there'll be ice particles all inside, and that ice cream is beginning to taste freezer burnt. That's because it kept defrosting and then refreezing. So I do not like to pour all of my ice cream into one big container and keep taking it out and putting it in and allowing it to defrost a little bit and then refreeze. I like to get whatever the amount that Hans and I would eat. I serve up little containers so that all I have to do is take one container out, we eat it fully, and then that's that. We're not refreezing it and allowing it to melt each time we serve it. So that is the way you're going to have the freshest ice cream throughout the month. And a big canister of ice cream like that will last quite a while. We do some really fun stuff. Once we take that homemade ice cream and we put it into the freezer, it freezes up really, really solid. And then I'm able to make ice cream sandwiches out of it. I'm able to put it more on an ice cream cone. But right in the beginning, we mostly just put it in a bowl and enjoy it that way. But once it goes into the freezer, it will become firm enough to do other applications. And so I hope that you enjoyed this video and it kind of took the mystery out of making homemade ice cream, and you realize it really is super easy just when you can find out the different steps to take to ensure success. So if you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you gave me a thumbs up and maybe share it with a friend and try this recipe. You're really going to love it. Don't forget that if you want the full printable recipe, you can click the link below and you can pick it up in my blog. I didn't go over amounts and exactly all the ingredients because this was more just a technique. So go ahead and click that link below and pick up the printable recipe. And if you love this and you would love to see some of my other content, I put a ton of delicious recipes on my channel every single week, and a lot of whole food, farm fresh, just delicious recipes, so you're not going to want to miss any of them. So go ahead and subscribe and click that little bell and you'll be notified every time I bring something to my channel. So go ahead and subscribe and we'll see you next week.